we are going to be learning how to recreate this design on my screen. And everything we'll be doing will be on a basic level. The goal of this lesson is to teach you how to start creating user interface design, and with the knowledge of this basic concept, you'll be able to understand advanced concepts in Figma. Now you know what we'll be doing in this video. Let's dive into the learning. So the first thing you will need to do when you want to create a design in Figma is to create a frame. Now, what is a frame? I'd like you to see a frame as a container or a box. You can have an item inside a container. You can also have an item inside a box. This is the reason why I want you to see a frame as a container or a box, because it has the ability to accommodate items inside of it. Now, if you look at this design on my screen, this is a frame. And inside this frame, there are different elements inside this frame. Now, all these elements were used to compose this design. And anywhere this frame goes, all the elements goes with it. So frame helps you hold every item you'll be using to compose your design. Now you have an idea of what a frame is. I'll show you how to create a frame in Figma, and that frame is the frame we're going to use to create this design on the screen. So I'm going to zoom out, and now beside this frame I'm going to create another frame just like this. I'll come over here and select frame. Now I've selected frame, I have two options. The first option is to draw the type of frame that I want. So when I mean the type of frame that I want, I'm referring to the width and height that I desire for the frame. This is the first option. The second option is to go with one of the predefined frame inside Figma. So I'm going to delete this frame I just drew by hitting on the delete key on my keyboard. Now I'm going to select the frame again, and this time I'll come to the right side. Make sure you're under design. There's a tab for design, there's a tab for prototype. Make sure you're under design. Now these are different screens you'll be able to use for your digital design, and for this design I will use the desktop. Different screens suitable for digital design. If you're designing for the phone, a mobile app, you have options under the phone to select a device you'll be designing for, and these devices already have a predefined width and height. So you are going to be making use of that predefined width and height, and once you're testing on this particular device, everything will come out well. In this video, our focus is on desktop, because the design we will be designing will be used on a desktop device. So our focus is on desktop. I'll close this drop down and I'll open the desktop option. Under the desktop option, these are different devices, but I will be going with this option that says desktop. So I'm going to click on this desktop. Now I have the frame. The next thing I want to introduce you to is the ruler. Now if you look at this interface, at the top side here is a ruler, and at the left side I have another ruler. So to activate this ruler, if you're not seeing it on your own screen, simply what you do is to come over to this drop down close to the Figma logo and select view. On that view, make sure this option ruler is checked. Now if I turn it off, you will see I no longer have that ruler. So I'm going to go back and reactivate the ruler option by clicking on ruler. Now I have the ruler available, and I want to show you one benefit of having the ruler activated. With the ruler, you can make use of the ruler line, or you can refer to the line as a red line. I have my mouse on this ruler. If I want to activate the line, the ruler line or the red line, I will place my cursor at the top of the ruler and drag out, as if I want to drag the ruler out. Now you can see there is a red line. With this red line, I can do a lot of things. One of the things I can do is to use the ruler line as a guide. For example, if I want to get the exact width of this menu at the top, from this point to this point, I can make use of the ruler. So I'm going to put one at the top, and I will go again. I'm going to bring out another ruler line. Now I have a guide. The top, I have a guide by using a ruler line at the top and also using the ruler line at the bottom. Now I want to create a frame that would have this width and height. So I'm going to come over to frame, select frame, and now I can draw. I'm going to zoom. I'll click on this hand tool to move the design around, and once I'm done, I'll go back. I'll click on move to deactivate the hand tool and be able to select another tool. So I'm going to click on the frame tool, and now I will draw a frame following these red lines. And now I have a frame. I can give this frame a color by clicking on fill. You see now there is a white color. I can change the color to black. I can change it to red. I can move the color around and select what I want, depending on what I want. So this is one of the ways you can use the red line, which is the ruler line in Figma. And all through the video, you will see me using this line to get specific width and height of some of the parts of this design. Now you know this, I'm going to delete this frame by hitting the delete key on my keyboard. And that is gone. I want to delete this red line at the bottom, so I'll select it by just clicking on it and hit the delete key on my keyboard. This red line does not only come horizontally, it can also come vertically. If I want a vertical line, I would come to this ruler here on the left side, and from there I will draw the red line out. So now I have an horizontal line, and I also have a vertical line, and I can do this to get a specific width. For example, if I want to get the width of this frame from here to here, I can use the red line. So now I have the width from here to here, and also the height from top to bottom, and the width from left to right. And these will become a guide for me when I want to draw a frame. I'll select the frame tool and drag, and then give it a fill color. I give it a color. So now you understand the concept of the ruler line, which I'll also be referring to as the red line. I'm going to introduce you to another concept called layout grid. But first, before I do that, I'll delete all these red lines by selecting on the line individually and use the delete key on my keyboard to delete the red lines. So I've deleted all the red lines. The next concept I want to introduce you to is called layout grid. Now on the right hand side, you can see under auto layout there is an option called layout grid. Soon you understand what this does. So to activate the layout grid, I'm going to click on this plus icon, select it, and once I select it, I'm going to click on this icon, layout grid settings. So I'm going to click on it, and here I'm going to click this drop down and select column. I can also select row if I want it to be a row, and if I want it to be a column, I'll select this. By default, it's going to be on grid. But in this design, I'll be using column. So I'm going to click on columns. And each of this red space you're seeing is the column. The white spaces between the columns are called gutter. Now you know this. There are different layout grid systems for columns that you can use for designs depending on the screen size you're designing for. Now for a desktop, one of the layout grid column system available is the 12 column grid system, and in this video that is the standard I will be using to create this design, the 12 column grid system. And what that simply means is that I want to create 12 columns in this design. So I'm going to, under the count, Figma is asking for how many columns, and then it will come up with the columns by counting how many columns I want, then it will come up with the columns. So I'm going to type in 12, and this color is the color you're seeing here. The opacity is the level of transparency for the color. If I want to make the color more visible, I'll change it from 10% to 100%. And now you can see the columns color are more visible. Now to reduce the color so that we are able to see our design through the color, I'll take it back to the default value, which is 10%. Now it's back to the default value, which is 10%, and now we can see through the color, the different elements used to compose this design. Now we know about count, we know about color, and we also know about opacity. You can also determine the type of column you want to create. And under this drop down, there is stretch, center, right, and left. But I will advise you to stay on stretch. And you can see the column spreads across the design. And the width is having a value of auto, meaning it's going to adjust itself automatically. Margin is the line outside your space of design. Imagine all of these elements are grouped together. Margin is the space outside the elements. For example, this space at the left, at the right, at the top. This space are margins. So for the margin, usually it will be on the left and on the right. This space from here, now from this button to the extreme end of this frame is our margin. But right now we have a column here, so there is no margin at the moment. But to add a margin, we'll come over to this place and enter a value. So let's start with 80. I want this column to be on the same line with these elements here. So the text and the button, I want it to be on the same line. And the rest space will be the margin. So I'm going to change the value and make it something, let's try 70. We're getting close. I'm going to make it 60. This is what I want, to have this column ending on the same line with these elements, the text, the button, and the image here. And then the space from this button or image to the extreme end of this frame on the left will be regarded as a margin. And on the left side, you can see the same thing applies to that side. This is the left margin. So once we set up all this value, you close this box. Sometimes you just want to see your design and see it very clear. So you will need to turn off the layout grid, which are these columns here. So to turn off the columns, if you look at the right side here, we have 12 columns. Now to activate and deactivate this, you click on this eye icon, deactivate, activate. And to take it off, you click on this icon that looks like a subtraction sign. And once you click on this, all of these settings will go away. But the goal is not to click on it because I do not want these settings to go away. But what I'll be doing most times is to use this control here to activate the columns or deactivate the columns. So now you understand this concept. I will start designing the elements on this frame. And I'm going to start with the header part. So in this header, there is a logo, and also we have the menu, and we also have two buttons. And for each of this menu, there is a drop down. So all of these, I'm going to show you how to design them. But first, what I'll do before designing them is to click on this frame and activate this column system, or recreate the column system on this frame. So I'm going to deactivate this, and on this frame I'll select it, come over to layout grid, select column, doing this for the second time so that you can understand the process better, and give it a count of 12. I'm going to leave this default color, leave the default opacity, and I'll set the margin to 60 since I want to make use of the same margin on this frame. There is an image inside this frame. To show you the image, I'm going to double click and you can see there is an image inside. So I'm going to double click out. If I turn on the layout grid on this frame, desktop 1, you're going to see that I have the exact same amount of margin on the left and on the right, left and on the right, and these white spaces between the columns are called gutter. And for the gutters, the value is 20. So I'm going to close. On desktop 2, so let's say we just want to work with 6 columns. I'm going to change this 12 to 6. Now you can see the width of the column has increased. So I'm going to take it back to 12, and you can see the width of the column has decreased. So I'm going to close this box. And here are some of the items I've created already. So I'm going to recreate these items. Select the hand tool to position the frame in the center. And when I'm done, I will go to move, select move, so that I'm able to select another tool. Now I'm going to use the red line. I'm going to select this line. Also going to select this line. From my design here, I have this. I'm going to make a copy of this, the logo. I'll drag it over. I'm going to drag it to this side, but before I start using it, I'm going to select scale tool. Let's assume that this image was bigger. So using this red line, I'll be able to get the same width like the logo at the top. So I'm going to drag this inside and select the scale tool. The scale tool is different from the move tool. So what the scale tool does is that the scale tool enables you to scale items. An image, a text, it enables you to scale items. You are either increasing or decreasing, and it's good practice to always start the scaling by choosing a corner from either the top right, top left, or bottom right, bottom left, instead of scaling like this. You can scale like that, but it is better to scale from this side. And you can hold down your shift key to scale. So scaling like this, it's in one position and you can see it scaling. And if you hold down your Alt key, you can see the scaling is happening from the center, unlike when just holding a corner and scaling. You see, the movement is happening from one direction, but holding down the Alt key, the movement is coming from the center. So that's how to scale with the scale tool. So now I have it. I'm going to zoom more, use the hand tool to move the item, and I'll select move and select scale again. So now I'll hold and scale. I want the width to start from this first red line, and I want it to end on the second red line. So now I've done this, I'm going to move this here, but I want to move it to the top, so I'm going to use the arrow key on my keyboard to move it to the top. Now moving to the top like that, you can see the image but it's not visible, and that's because it is still inside the frame. So if I really want to take it out, I'm going to hold it and drag it outside. So what I can do is to bring it to the top here so that I'm sure that I'm still on track. So now it's outside. It is outside the frame. I'll now move it a little bit far away from the frame. The next thing is to create this menu. So to create the menu, I'll go back and select the move key, and now I will select option on Figma and type in the first menu, product. I do not know the actual font size of this text here, so let me give it a size, let's say 24, and try if they have the same width. So 24 is bigger. Let me reduce it to 19. It's better, but it's still bigger, so I'm going to reduce it to 18. So 18 works. I can use my arrow key on my keyboard to move it down and see. So it works. The next thing, in fact, I'm going to click on this logo and place it on top of the logo here. Remember, there is an image. You see, there is an image. This is the full image. I'm going to close this. There is an image inside this frame called desktop 1. This is what I meant when I said the frame is working like a container or a box. So now I have, this is desktop 1. I have this image which is this logo. I have this text currently, and I have this big image inside desktop 1. The moment I'm done recreating all these elements or items, I'm going to take them outside this desktop 1 frame. But at the moment I have a very big image, this image here. None of this text on this image is editable. It is just serving as a guide for me to recreate the design. So now you understand this, I'll continue with this element. Over here I can see there is an icon which is indicating that this menu has a drop down menu. So to create this icon, I'm going to use a plugin called Iconify. So to get that plugin in Figma, you need to right click. You see this box and you come to plugin. Under plugin, I have the plugin installed already, but if you don't have it and you want to install it, you click on manage plugins, and inside this search bar you're going to type Iconify, and I'll allow it to load. It's going to search and it will come up with the plugin. Now I have this plugin already installed. If you don't have the plugin, it's going to give you this option to run the plugin. So I'm going to open the plugin because I already have the plugin in Figma installed. So I'm going to click on the plugin, and I'm going to search for an arrow. There's already some icons I'm seeing here, but for the purpose of showing you how to search, I'm going to type arrow and click search icon. For instance, I'm looking for maybe a phone icon. I'm going to type phone, or a call icon. I'm going to type call and click search icon, and you see it show me different types of icon based on the search I made. But in this video, I'm looking for an arrow icon. I'm going to search for arrow icon and click on search icon. So I have two pages. It's showing me two pages. The first one, I'm not seeing an arrow icon facing down, so I can decide to, so I want to check the page 2. Still, I'm not seeing an icon facing down. Page 3, I'm not seeing an icon facing down. Page 4, I'm not seeing an icon facing down. So in page 4, there is an icon facing, or it's facing the left. So I'm going to go back to the page 1. I'm going to select this icon. I can drag this icon out or click on import to bring this icon in. So if I click on import icon, I'm going to have the icon showing up. So I'm going to zoom out to check for the icon. It is tiny, so I'm going to try to check for the icon. Now you can see the icon is showing here, so I'm going to drag it out. That is the icon. Another way I can do it is to click on the icon, staying on the page. So what I can do is to, instead of using the import icon button, instead of clicking on that, I'll just select the icon and drag it out. So it's easy for me to see where the icon landed. I'm going to delete this one, and I'll use this icon. I'm going to move it to the top here. Now I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to put it side by side, but this icon is facing down while this is facing the right. I'm going to rotate it so it's facing down, and to do that, I'll just place my mouse around the frame, and you can see the icon changes. So if I want to scale, look at how the icon looks like. But if I take it outside, you can see the icon is a little bit curved, meaning if I drag down, I'm going to hold down and rotate, I can move the icon. So I've changed the position of the icon by rotating the icon. I'm going to undo and show you another way to do this. Back to the default position of the icon. Another way to do it is to use this option, rotation, but here we are working with angle, because for every rotation it is stating a particular angle. At the moment, this is on an angle of 0 degree. So make sure you're selecting the icon. Select the icon and enter 45 degree. Now we're going to try 90-degree because I want to flip the icon. So now I have it facing up, but I want it to face down. So the next thing I'll do is to right click on it, and I'm going to scroll down and select flip vertical. So now I have the icon, like the icon on this image. So I'm going to select the icon, and I'll use the arrow key on my keyboard to place it on top of the icon showing on the image. Now once I've done this, what I'll do next is to select the icon. I'll hold down shift and select this test to select both items. Holding down shift enables me to select both items. And I'm going to come to this option at the top, and I'm going to select align vertical center to align, to place the items in the center vertically. Now once I've done this, I'm going to group these two items so I can move both of them as a single item. I can move them around as a single item. So I'm going to come and I'll select, right click and select group selection. Now I can move this item around, and I'm going to duplicate this for the other ones. I'm going to duplicate this item by using Ctrl D, or I'm going to hold down the Alt key on my keyboard and just drag out. So I'm going to do it again. I'll hold down the Alt key on my keyboard. Now look at my cursor. It is, at the moment I have just a single one, but when I hold down the Alt key, you can see it has changed to a double arrowhead. So once you're seeing this double arrowhead, you should know that the Alt key is activated, and then you drag out. So now I'm going to delete this one because I need just one, and rename, click on the test and rename it to solutions. I'll click outside and select the group again, and I'm going to place it on top of the image. I use the hand tool, I'll select the hand tool to move my frame around. When I'm done, I'll go back and select the move tool. I'll click on solutions, I'll make a duplicate of it, and here I'm going to click out so I don't make a mistake. I'll bring it out and rename it to community. Now because this test is longer than solution, it has covered the icon. So what I'll do is to select the test and move it backward a bit. And when I'm done, just move it a little bit. Maintain the same width. When I'm done, I'm going to select both so that it's properly aligned. I'll do this align vertical center. Make sure it looks like the other ones I've created, the look of the design consistent. So I have this. I'm going to click on the group, the item, and I'm going to position it on top of the image. I'm going to make a duplicate again, and I'll call this resources. I'm going to move it close, select the icon, and use the option align vertical center. this is properly aligned. Now it places it on top. And for the final one, which is pricing, now if I click on this, I can see the icon is not sitting on top of the icon on the image, so I'll use my arrow key to adjust that. When I'm done, I'll click outside. Now I'm going to duplicate by holding down Alt and duplicate again. This time I'll click on the group, and this icon is inside a frame. How to know that this is the group, this text is the resource, and this other one is the frame? So if I click on this icon, the eye icon, it means I want to hide the frame. So I'm going to click on it, and now you can see the icon frame is gone if I click on it to activate it. So what I'll do for the pricing is to hide the icon, and now I can select this text, double click on it and rename it pricing. I'm going to click outside and place it on top of the image. And now I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to use the hand tool to move the frame to this side so I can create these elements here. I'm done moving. I'm going to go back and select move. So now to start creating this part, I'm going to select the pricing. I'm going to duplicate it, same way we've been duplicating others. And I do not need the icon, so I'm going to keep the icon still hidden and rename this to, double click on it and rename it to contact sales. Once I'm done, I'll click outside and I'll move it on top of the image. So the next thing is to create this button. So to create this button, I'm going to select a frame and I'm going to draw at the top of this image. Let me zoom in. I want it to have the same height and the same width. Now it's not visible because I've not added a border. So to add a border in Figma, it's called a stroke. So you click on stroke to add a border and give it a color. It has a default color of black. I'm going to, for the text, we also have a default color of black, full black. So I'm going to leave it on that same color. So I'm going to leave it as the default color, and I'm going to bring it out. I'm going to drag the frame out so that you can see the changes that I'll be making. So the next thing I want to do is to create this rounded corner. I'll select the frame and close to the angle. We've used the angle earlier. Now we are going to explore this option called corner radius. I'm going to click on it and I'll give it a corner radius of 10. But it looks like it's a little bit more rounded than what we have at the top. So I'm going to click on it and reduce it to something like 7. I'm going to click on it and try and see. So 7 works. The next thing I'm going to do is to duplicate this test. I'm going to rename it log in. Because a frame is like a container or a box and we have the ability to place something inside, I'm going to select this text and place the text inside. And Figma usually give an hint if an item is in the center of a frame. Now if I move this to the top, it's still at the top, but it's still taking the center position. If I move it to the left, you can see it's only the horizontal red line. There is a red line showing, but there is a red line showing at the middle and it's an horizontal line. Now if I move it to the middle, you're going to see another red line showing vertically. So what I want to do is to place the item in the middle of the vertical line and the horizontal line. So now I can know that this item is in the middle of the vertical line and the horizontal line. And now I can move things around. Another way to achieve this is to create a rectangle. So I'm going to create a rectangle, same size, and I'm going to bring it out. I'm going to give it a stroke of black, and I'm going to take off the inner color, no color, taking off the fill color, the inner color, and give it a rounded corner. Give it a rounded corner of 7. I'm going to duplicate this text and rename it log in. And now I'm going to put it inside the rectangle. Inside the rectangle. Now, I'm doing this to show you the difference between the frame and the rectangle. I'm going to bring out this. So I have this frame. This is a rectangle and this is a frame. So let me rename this to rectangle and I'll rename this to frame. So I'm going to put this inside. You can see the red line is also helping as a guide to position this item in the middle. I'm also going to take the frame, but the difference here is that this shape, I created it with a rectangle, and this shape, the shape on the right, I created it with a frame, and I achieved the same thing. But now you're going to see the difference between the normal shape and the frame. So now I'm going to move this text inside and position it in the center. Now I don't need to do anything when it comes to the frame. I'll just select the frame and I'll move it around. But if I try to do the same thing, I just select this shape and I move things around. You see, the text is not moving with the shape. I will have to move the text again to place it inside the shape. And if I select the shape and move the shape again, I will have to do the same thing. So the only way I can put this text inside the shape is to select the shape and group the item. So I'm going to group selection. Now I can move it around like I can with the frame. So I showed you these two ways of creating a button to show you the difference between a shape and a frame. So if you create with a frame, if you create a button with a frame, automatically the item you place inside the frame stays inside the frame. You don't need to group the item. But if you're creating an element like a button, or generally if you're trying to put an element inside a shape, you will have to make use of group selection. So now we know this, I'm going to delete this button and I'll rename this back to login, log in, and I'm going to hold down this hand button to move the frame around, and I'm going to select the move tool, click on, and now I'm going to hold down Alt and drag it out. I'm going to drag it out and drag from the right to increase the width. Now I'm going to move this text and place it at the middle, and also I'm going to change the color of the text to white, change it to white, and for the background I'm going to put a fill. I'm going to use this fill option to put a color to fill the space, but now I'm going to change the color from white to black. So now I have something similar to the button at the top. I'll just have to rename the text get started for free, and I'll position the text in the middle. So now I have this, I'll zoom out and I'll hold down shift and select the 3 items, and I'll drag outside the frame. So now it is no longer inside the frame. You can see this blue line, it is showing the boundary of the frame. So these items are outside, they are no longer inside the frame. But for these ones, we still have these menus inside the frame. Now before I drag this menu outside, remember I have grouped them before, but now I can still group all of them, even though I've grouped this text and the icon. So this is a group, this is a group, this is a group, this is a group, this is a group. Now I want to group all of them to become one item so that I can move all of them around at the same time. I'm going to hold down shift, select this first menu, select the second one, select the third item, the fourth one, and the fifth one. And I want to make sure the spacing between these items are the same. I'm going to go to the top, I'll click on this option that says more option, and I'm going to use distribute horizontal spacing. Now I know that the spacing here, 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 and here are all the same, and I will proceed to select this option, group selection. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to hold down shift, click on this group. I'm going to drag out. Now I'm going to group again. I'm going to right click and select group selection. So the logo and the menu are now one item. I have them as one item, not separate items. I have them as a single item now. So I'm going to zoom out and I'll use the hand tool to move. By clicking the key H on my keyboard, I'm able to activate the hand tool, and when I'm done, I'm going to click on V on my keyboard to activate the move tool, telling Figma I'm done with that tool. I just want to move things around or select a different tool. So now I have that. I just want to make sure everything are the same. I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to bring this down. Select these items. Have this. Select this, and going to align vertically center by clicking on this option. So I also have this. This is already a group, so I'm going to move it out. I'm going to select both and move them out because I've already positioned them. But I can see that this group, the items here are at the top, while this one is a little bit down. So I'm going to use the vertical, this option, align vertical center. I'm going to select it, and now I have both group properly aligned. I have them properly aligned. I have both of them on the same line. So I'm going to do the final grouping. I'm going to right click and do group selection. And now I can bring it inside. And bring it inside this frame. And the next thing I'm going to create is this image and the button. So there's a button here, so what I'll do is to click on this button and I'll hold down Alt and create a duplicate of it so that I can use it here. So now I'm going to zoom, use the hand tool to move the frame. But before I place the button, the test here, the same, get started for free. I'm going to, well, the text is a little bit bolder, so I'm going to change this from regular. I'm going to select on the text, select on the text, and I'm going to make it to medium or semi-bold. Semi-bold. Now I'm going to move it. I'm going to place it at the top. Another thing I'm going to do is to use this red line. I already have one red line here. I'm going to delete this and drag in another red line. I have this red line here and I'm going to create a test. Says Figma helps design and development teams build great products together. So I'm going to try to get a font. So the size of the font I'm using now is a little bit small. I'm going to change it to 20 and also reduce it. I'm going to put it back to the default state, regular. I'm going to make this 22. And now I'm going to drag from the right, because this text, the text It's on a 2 line, so I want to do the same thing. I want it to enter a second line. So the test here, you can see it's a 2 line test. I want to do the same thing by holding from the right and dragging so that I can have the second line. So I'm going to test and see if it's close to the line. I can still see some spacing here, so I'm going to increase this to 24. So I'm going to increase it, say 26. I'm going to reduce it. Because I don't know the exact value, I'm going to use the scale tool. So I'm going to hold down and use the scale tool. This is one of the way to leverage on the scale tool. So now I can move this and put it at the top of the test. Another element I want to create is the element at the top here that says think bigger. Think bigger. It's a comma. Build faster. Full stop. So now I'm going to do the same thing because I want it on 2 line, and I'll click on it. I'm going to use the scale tool to make it bigger. Go back to move, select the test, and I'm going to make it medium. I'm going to move. So I'm going to zoom in. Use the hand tool to move things around. I want to try to place it on top of the font properly. I'll go back to scale. I'll use the scale tool. So now it's a little bit close. Move it down a little bit. I'm using the R for positioning. Now the reason why it's not exactly the same is because we're using a font that is close to the font used on the image. Assuming we have the exact font used on the image, while placing this text on top, it is going to fit in properly. But because we don't have the exact font, but this is close to the font, we're still going to work with it and try to align them close. And looking at the arrow, I can see that this letter R fits in well, and for the T it fits in well. So now what I'll do is I'm going to click on this test. So going to click on this test and click on this button, and I'm going to group. I'm going to use this option, group selection. And once I'm done, I'll use the hand tool to move things around. I'm going to move it over here. So I have this section. I have this section. You can see the design is coming out well. So The next thing I'm going to do is to create this section, this image, and also create this section using this image. So I have this image here. I'm going to drag this image, bring it and put it inside the frame. And also I'll bring this image inside the frame. Now I have the image inside the frame. I want to position them properly. So I want to position the image. I'm going to use the red line. I'm going to take this frame. I'm going to move it close to this frame. Now I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to use the red line. I'll put it on top of the button. I'm going to create another red line here. I want it to match the red line on the left. I'll do the same thing at the bottom. I want it to match with the red line on the left. So I'm going to bring it down. And with this, I'll be able to position this item properly. I'm going to select on this and use my arrow key. I'll move it to the top. So now I have this. The next thing I'll do is to do the same thing for the image. I'm going to drag another line. I can see that this image is touching the extreme of the frame. It exceeds the margin. And for the height, I'll use that as a guide for the height. So for the top, and this one for the bottom. So with this, I can move this image to the top that it touches the red line. And for the image, I'm going to move. You see, while moving, it's not keeping the size. So instead of moving like this, I'm going to undo. Instead of moving like this, I move to the top. Instead of adjusting the image like that, I want the image to keep its original size, because if I decide to move like this, it doesn't keep its original size. See, it's affecting the space here. So I'm going to undo, and to keep the space, because I want it to end, I want it to be on the same position with this red line. I'm going to hold down the command key on my keyboard, and now I will drag up. It will not affect any area of the image. The image will still keep its original size. Apart from the height, I have reduced. Every other thing remains the same. So now I've done for that image. I'm going to do for this image. I'm going to drag from the red line. I'm going to move this image first and see this spacing here, and that is available here. So I'm going to draw a red line again. So for this image, seems it's okay. Now another thing, if I turn off the grid layout, if I turn it off, you see there is a shadow. So let me delete these red lines. Undo. In case you run into a mistake like that, you just undo. And now we can see clearly on this image there is an effect, a shadow effect, and on this image there is no shadow effect. So I'm going to add a shadow effect. I'm going to add a shadow effect. Now click on the image, come over to effect, click on effect and select the kind of effect. I'm going to be using the drop shadow, this, and I'll give it, I'm going to put in 1. I'm going to put in 1. I'm going to put in 1. For the y-axis, I'm going to put in 1. So what this x-axis means is that for this horizontal direction, and the y is for this vertical direction. So here is the amount of blur that I want. So I'm going to set this, I'm going to set it 7, and for the spread I'm going to set it 4. And now you can see there is, the shadow is showing up. I'm going to click on the image, I'll go back to the effect and I'll make the opacity 10. That's reducing the thickness of the shadow effect. I'll make it spread a little bit. I'm going to use 5. Now the shadow is as visible as the one here. So I've recreated this design on the left. This design on the right is the recreation of the design. What I have on the left is just an image. You can see it's just an image. So if I click out, now every element on this image, I've recreated it. The header with the logo, menu, and buttons, text, and a button, an image, and an image. And on this image, I applied the shadow effect. A recap of what I did in this video is to show you how to activate the red line, the ruler line, by dragging from the ruler, and also show you how to delete. Click on the line and hit the delete key on your keyboard. Also clicking on the frame, how to set up a layout grid. Also how to group items together, how to adjust an image, either an image or a frame, how to keep a particular portion of the frame or the image the same. For instance, if I want to move this frame and I wanted to have a height of half the frame without destroying the items inside, I'm going to select on the frame and hold down Command and then move it. So every other thing, see, the remaining part of this image is still inside the frame, but it's not visible. I'm going to undo, and in this video I added shadow to this image, so it's another thing to learn how to apply shadow effect to an element in Figma. Now you have this knowledge of how to use Figma to create design or recreate a design. Make sure you practice.